Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trilokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Twameva Mata Chapita Twameva Twameva bandhuscha sakha Twameva Twameva vedya dravinam Twameva Twameva sarvam mama deva deva Twameva sarvam mama deva deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, where are we in our text?
We're on 318.
318. And Saundarya, can you help us out this evening?
318. Sadvasana Spruti Vidshram Bhane Sati Yasav Vilina Pyaha Ma Divasana Atiprakrashta Pyaruna Prabhayam Viliyate Sadhu Yata Tamistra. When the longing to be one with Brahman has vividly risen to expression, the egocentric vasanas will readily disappear, as the most intense darkness completely disappears to the glow of the rising sun.
So frequently I will tell people self-realization is not difficult. In Gita, Krishna says, easy to perform. But it's very rare. And it's very rare because nobody wants it. We may think we want it, but it's like the person whose life is a wreck because of alcoholism, and then goes to a 12-step group thinking, well, I'm going to learn how to drink moderately. No, it doesn't work that way. In order to get the benefits of that spiritual life, you must give up the booze. Likewise, in order to have sthita prajna, steady wisdom, and even more importantly, the easy ability for the mind to revel in the self, an intense spirit of renunciation is required. Now, St. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, says it so clearly. I do not do that which I would do, and I do that which I hate. Therefore, it is not I that do it, but sin that is lodged in my limbs. Sin was Paul's way of talking about vasana. So most of us understand, yeah, I should be giving up the world, but I can't yet. My mind still extroverts. I still want this, and I still dislike that. And I still ruminate after the fact over such and such and so and so. I can't help it. I can't help it. So, what is the solution? We only give up the world through deep insight. To see things is called pashyana. To see things clearly with transcendental vision is called vipassana, or as the Buddhists call it, vipassana, usually translated as insight meditation. But if you go on a vipassana retreat, some of the things you discover, just sit there and feelings arise and then they go away. Thought structures arise and they go away. A pain in the body will arise and it goes away. It helps us to see the fundamental impermanence of the entire world of name and form. And as the unconscious keeps unloading and we don't do anything about it, we just watch it. In time, the mind starts to settle down. Why? Because your essential nature is bliss. Chidamangarupaham. That's what Shankara says. And also, we are able to begin to let go of our attachment to the world through a steady observation of their defects. When I see, no, it's only bringing me pain, and I begin to develop the desire to be free from desire. And then we do what Swamiji called sublimate our desires. I'm able to let go of my addiction to worldly things and turn the mind towards the infinite. So I can practice this deep introversion of the mind. Endeavor to carry that through my whole day. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Tamas tama karyam manarthajalam na drishyate satyudite dine se tata dvayananda rasanubhutau naivasti bandho nacha dukkha gandaha. Darkness and its resultant evils are not noticed when the sun rises. So too, On realization of bliss absolute, there is neither bondage nor the least trace of misery.
Yes. So, if I'm afraid of the dark, I'm afraid that there's a monster under my bed or one in the closet. Many children have that. They need to have a night light. If you turn on the overhead light, it dispels all the darkness. Likewise, in the darkness of Thomas, in my mind, oh, politics, relationship, finances, the stock market, my job. These are just phantoms. Why? Because none of it touches you. You're safe. So when we realize that's my self nature, when we realize the fundamental dream-like nature of the world of name and form, then we quit externalizing our happiness. We give up the idea that I have to play whack-a-mole with the world. It's all going to work out. And this brings us peace. This brings us peace. Next verse.
Next chapter. Total vigilance, its price.
Yeah.
Drishyam pratitam pravilapayasan sanmatram anandaghanam vibhavayan samahita sanbahirarantaram kalam nayate sati karma bandhe, causing the perceived universe, both external and internal, to vanish, and meditating upon the reality, the bliss embodied, one should pass one's time watchfully for any residual prarabdha.
Yes. So this verse can be interpreted in two ways. The first, if we think of the mind state of nirvikalpa samadhi, when all the thoughting stops, the individual knower of the world and the world vanishes. But the other way always to interpret a verse like this. Snake in the rope is like nirvikalpa samadhi. When I apprehend the rope, the snake is not available for perception. When the mind stops and all that remains is prakash of consciousness, the light of consciousness, the world is not available. But then mirage waters in the desert. When I realize it's heat waves off the sand, my senses continue to report what looks like water. So frankly, this is a more fruitful approach. No personal sense of self is real. This phenomenal world is mithya. It comes about as an illusion. It's all just imagination. Don't take it seriously. Constant vigilance. If jiva, bhavana, a thought of self arises, no, I'm not going to believe you. Things to watch for. Remember, we talked about chintyam. After the fact rumination. You go to a party or give a presentation and you say something, and then after the fact, oh, I wish I'd said something different. You know, that's the ego's habit. No blame if it happens, but the yogi is vigilant. No, I'm not going to indulge in you. Oh, oh, oh. And endeavoring to stay empty as we pass through the world. Having a mind like a sieve. You pour water in it and the water just goes. So as sense perception enters the mind, don't let it land anywhere. What ego wants to do is, why did they say that? It's not what they really think about. Oh, I wish I hadn't done this. Chintya. Someone's critical. You get a little sting. Just drop it. Stay all through the day. Constant vigilance. In my morning meditation, I'm reminded, oh, that's right. I am Brahman. Not this body, not this mind, not these thoughts. But then watch through the day. Practice what we call Sakshi Bhava, the attitude of a witness. Don't let triggered thoughts take hold. Drop it. Be empty. Any thoughts on the practice? And you can do it in bits and pieces. You can decide to go for a walk. Practice just tuning up the mind when you go for a walk. Or you may decide, okay, I'm going to do housework this morning. And practice when I'm doing the housework. Try to stay tuned down. And if people say things or you have to answer the phone, no problem. But stay empty. Let things just pass. This is the vigilance that Shankara is talking about. Next verse.
Pramado brahmanishthayam na kartavya kadachana pramado mrityurityaha bhagavan brahmana sutaha. One should never neglect one's steady attunement with Brahman. Bhagwan Sanat Kumara, the Creator's own son, has called inadvertence death itself.
Yeah. Now let me back up. I forgot to address where he says, watch for residual prarabdha. So experiences will happen. You'll get your allotted dose of successes and failures, honors and dishonors. Let them all pass through. That's our prarabdha. Here in this verse, Shankara says, vigilance. Vigilance. Don't indulge in the siren-like temptations of egoism. I, me, mine, me. And of course, it's always coupled with they, them, they did it to me. Positively or negatively. Keep the mind deeply introverted. Stay empty. Next verse.
Na pramadadanathyo jnanina swaswarupatah tato moha shto hamdishtato handasto vyata. No greater danger is there for the man of wisdom than carelessness about his own real nature. From this delusion, thence egoism. This is followed by bondage and then by misery.
So when we get to the end of the book, the Shishya says there's no bondage, there's no realization, there's no scripture, there's no Shishya, there's no guru. It's all Maya. Only the self is real. And we thunder, there are no rules for the woman or man knowledge. But a common pitfall. We think we're in a state that we're not. And the mind still has its extroverting tendency. And we do what I call the Vedanta logic loop. It's all an illusion and it doesn't matter, so why not? And we see lots and lots of people who present themselves as teachers. All sorts of bad behavior. They not only become fallen yogis themselves, but they hurt other people. You know, if you're getting your juice, self. Yes, your desire and object of desire become one, it's only the self. But you know, is that the only way you're getting it? Probably through inattention and inadvertence, you're going to start to develop attachment. Once attachment comes, then fear and anger will arise. And you're not a nice person. There should be no talk of realization as long as the mind still extroverts into movement. Now, the woman or man of realization will have her preferences. Only you can decide if it's a preference or existence. Next verse.
विषयाभिमुखं दृष्ट्वा विद्वांसमपि विस्मृतिः विक्षेपयति दिदिदोषैर्योषा jaramiva priyam. Finding even a wise man hankering after the sense objects, forgetfulness torments him through the evil propensities of the intellect, as a woman torments her doting paramour.
Yes. One of my favorite images that Shankar will use elsewhere is when the she donkey is in season. The male donkey figures it out, follows her around, and goes, but if she's not ready to breed yet, he follows her around and then she just kicks him in the face. Doesn't dissuade him at all. He keeps following her around and she keeps kicking him in the face. So you may have read lots of scriptures, have a taste of the sound. If you're not vigilant, you're inattentive, you allow the mind to indiscriminately extrovert into the objects. In time, you will suffer just like an ordinary person. Perhaps even more, because you have no delusion as to why you're suffering. In our Wednesday morning class, Jivan Mukti Viveka, Vidyaranya is talking about the natural renunciation of the Paramahansa, the person of realization. There's no effort to renounce the world when you're Sthita Prajna. It's seen to be what it is. I use the phrase trinkets and baubles, like pieces of colored glass. It's not precious jewels. Maybe pretty to look at, but nothing substantive, nothing real. All right, next verse.
Yata parakritam, yata pakristam, shaivalam, shanamatram na tishtati, avarnoti tata, maya pragyanam, vapi pranamukham. As moss, even if removed, does not stay away for a moment, but closes up to cover the water again. So also Maya, or nations, covers even a wise man if he ever gets extrovert.
Yes. So the metaphor here is you have to have been in the south of India, like in Kerala, and by the villages, they're what they call tanks, which are these stoned in pools on the rivers, about the size of my living room here. There's usually several of them stepped. And the women come down with these great big, huge clay jars. They put them on their head. They've got these skinny little necks. It just amazes me. You know, they're and they don't even touch the jars, and the jars don't fall. And then when they get to the water's edge with the tank, they take down the jar. Now the tank is covered with algae. Here, Swamiji translates it as moss. It's really algae. And what they do is they splash the water away so they can dip the jar in and get the potable water. They leave the algae there because the algae eats the bacteria. India went through a period where they tried to kill all the algae, and then everybody drank the water and got sick. So now they leave it. But as soon as the ladies finish getting the fresh water, the algae goes. So while we are still working on getting rooted in this knowledge, established in this, be wary of habitual extroversion of the mind. Are you meditating? Are you remembering who you are? Are you allowing the mind to indiscriminately get caught up in the past and the future, the possession of this, the loss of that? Knock yourself out. As I like to say, we will gladly refund your misery. Don't forget the basic principle of what I call the pleasure principle. What's it feel like to want something you don't have? It sucks. Yoga says there's no other suffering. Ego says try to get as many objects of desire as possible. Yeah. And then the teacher says, how's that working out? And the teaching says, try giving up the craving and see what happens. The mind comes home. Such is the power of Maya. We so easily forget it. Next verse.
Lakshya chutam cheyadi chittam misad bahirmukham sanni pate tatastata pramadata prachayukta kelikan dukha sopanna panktau patito yata tatha. If the mind ever so slightly strays from the ideal and becomes outgoing, then it goes down and down, just as a ball, inadvertently dropped on a flight of stairs, bounces down from one step to another.
This is one of my favorite images of Shankara. So you have to imagine a bunch of youngsters playing with a rubber ball on the portico of a South Indian temple. They're all stepped. And if the ball bounces on maybe the first step, one of the kids can grab it. But if it gets away from them, it goes bounce, bounce, ka-chunk, 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 all the way to the bottom. So the idea here is frequently we have no control over the arising of the first. But if we are inadvertent and allow the mind to go chunk, 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 and start ruminating on that theme of thinking, down we go. So it's when that first thought arises. Oh, I see. Oh, Namah Shivaya. Oh, Shivaya. Oh. Well, no one ever got arrested for their thinking. Is it wrong to be imagining things and fantasizing about this, that, and the other thing? Do what you wish. But the more you think about it, the more real it will become. And it's more difficult. So we have some chance, a point of power. First thought arises. Don't believe it. Turn the mind away. This is the deepest meaning of tapas, is to not permit the mind to follow its habituated flows of extroverted thinking. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Disha Yeshava Vishacheta Sankalpayati Tadgunan Samyak Sankalpanat Kamat Pumsa Pravartanam. When the mind enters the sense objects, it reflects upon their qualities. From mature reflections arises desire. After desiring, a man sets about to gain that thing and thus fulfill his desire.
So here Shankara breaks down what is it that causes my mind to extrovert. He's slowed down the process enough for us to see what happens. So let's break it down idea by idea. The first idea.
When the mind enters the sense objects, it reflects upon their qualities.
Yes. So an idea enters my mind. It can be a situation, it can be a person, it can be some event in the future, it can be some object, and I start to think about its qualities. Is it pleasurable? Is it misery producing? And if I keep that up, let's see what happens.
From mature reflection arises desire.
If I continue the chintya, the mature reflection on the qualities of that object, be it positive or negative, desire arises. I want that object, I want that person, I want that situation, or I don't ever want to talk to them again, I don't ever want to do this again, etc. Both are desire. Raga and Dvesha here can happen in both ways. And then once desire arises, let's see what happens.
After desiring, a man sets about to gain that thing.
Then comes kartavya, obligatory action, work. I set about to acquire the object of desire. That's the end of this verse, isn't it?
And thus fulfill his desire.
And there I do this to fulfill my desire. The other frame I frequently use in my mind because of the force of the past. I decide what is dear to me, priya. If I think about it a lot, then I start to want it. So I endeavor to get proximate to the object of desire, moda. Desire and object of desire become one. Pramoda, the point of pleasure. And in my ignorance, I attribute the bliss of my own self-nature to that person, place, thing, or situation, which in itself leaves a vasana, which at a future time will cause the image of the object to arise, and I start thinking about it, then I desire it, then I start going for it, etc. Next verse.
Jim, one question. Mature reflection just means actively wanting or not wanting something?
Does he break it apart? Can you see what the Sanskrit is? I think he means chintya, the after the fact rumination over the positive or negative effects of the object. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I see all these friends of mine pushing baby carriages. Babies. That's what's going to make all the difference in the world. Babies. They have the power to make me bliss. Babies. That seems so real, especially if you think about it. Or starting my own company. Or when I finally retire, it takes millions and millions of forms. But the dynamic is always the same. Next verse.
Tata swarupa vibhramsho vibharastastav patat yada patitasya vinanasham punarnaroha ikshate. There's one more. Sankalpam varjaye tat samad sarva nartasya karanam apatyani vivastuni vyadhigrasto yatorstrajet. Through inadvertence, a man may deviate from his real nature. The man who has thus deviated falls. The fallen comes to ruin and is rarely seen to rise again. Therefore, just as the eatables prohibited by the doctor are not taken by the victim of the disease, one should totally give up the habit of reflecting upon the sense objects, which is the root cause for all the mischief.
And I'm going to subtleize this, just drawing on my experience. What can tend to happen? People's lives are working, things are peaceful, and our mumukshutva begins to slacken a bit. I'm enjoying life. And when I try to meditate, it's hard to tune up. My mind is a bit noisy. So meditation itself is not as easy or as pleasurable as perhaps it had been. So, what tends to happen? I get further extroverted into the world. Too frequently, we've seen the phenomenon of a fallen yogi. They become a drug addict or an alcoholic or a sex addict, or start wanting to build a huge organization. Then all of a sudden they want more money. They've lost sight of the value of sannyas. Tense internal spirit of renunciation. And they have no atmaramana. They have no direct revelry in the self. Once they become a fallen yogi, you're rarely seen to rise again, Shankara says. So why? Next verse.
Atha pramadana parostiti mrityu vivekino brahma vida samadhau samahita siddhi mukpaiti samyak samahita samahi atma bhava savadhana. Therefore, to the discriminating knower of Brahman, there is no greater death than inadvertence to meditation. But the man who meditates regularly attains complete success. Therefore, carefully meditate upon Brahman in your mind.
Yes. Revel in the halls of Vedanta. Have a practice whereby you remember self-nature. Meditate. Now, this is advanced teaching here. For beginners, I say, 20 minutes a day is minimum. You can expand it to 40 minutes or an hour. Do well. You do that twice a day. Jai. When the white heat of our mumukshutva cranks up, you might find yourself meditating a couple hours at a time. But even more importantly, when you come out of your meditation seat, stay in meditation as you move through the world. If your mind extroverts, stop. Even if your job requires you to extrovert the mind, it seems like it's okay. But we all have moments where you can just stop for a moment. Remember who I am. Remember where happiness is. I do out there is prarabdha. It doesn't mean anything. Just like we in the world. Now, in the olden days when Swamiji was in the body, when a student had reached this state, whereas they are moving through the world, their mind would tune out. He would swoop us up and keep us very close. He was so deeply absorbed in the self. It was easy for us to do that around him. If we were acting like fools and got identified or triggered, he'd poke till we dropped it. No judgment on his part. It was never the circumstance that was particularly concerning to him. It was the extroversion. Keep tuning up the more. He would use phrases like, meet me there. Hurry home, Hari Om. Till the mind gets established. Next verse.
Next chapter. In the one, no plurality.
Yes.
Jivato yasya kaivalyam videhe saka kevala yatkinchit pashyato bhedam ayam brute yajushruti. He who is completely aloof, even while living, is alone really aloof after the dissolution of the body. The Yajur Veda declares that there is fear for one who sees even the least bit of distinction.
Yes. So the word he's used here is kevala, kaivalya, aloneness. We have to understand that this doesn't mean leaving the world physically and going and living in a cave, although many yogis do. It doesn't mean staying home all the time. It means remembering there's only one of us here. That's Brahman. What is this world? It is Leela. It is the divine play of the infinite. Brahma Satyam Jagan Nitya. Brahman alone is real. Phenomenal world is illusion. If the ego sense arises, even that is Brahman. Okay. So don't get involved. Sarvamaya, Sarvamananda. All this is Maya. It's all this in the next verse.
Yada kada vapi vipasdesha Brahman Brahmanyanante Vyayumatra Bhedam Pashyat Yatha Amusya Bhayam Tadaiva Yat Vikshitam Bin Nataya Pramada. Whenever the wise man recognizes even the least difference in the infinite Brahman at once, that which he sees as different through mistake, becomes a source of fear to him.
Yes. So, if even a little bit of difference, I and other, arises in mind, if you don't burn it out right then and there, fear, maya, will arise. Remember, going back to the prior section, the cause of me taking it real is after the fact mature rumination on its qualities. Drop it. Next verse.
Shruti Smriti Yayas Shattairya Nisiddhe Drishyatra Ya Swat Mamatim Karoti Upaiti Dukkopari Dukkajatam Nishiddha Karta Samalinduko Yata. He who identifies himself with the objective universe, which has been denied by hundreds of shrutis, smritis, and reasonings, suffers one misery after another, like a thief, for he indulges in something forbidden.
Yes. So if I even for a moment start to think I, the individual, am real, and the world of name and form is inherently joy giving or misery producing, and I, because of inadvertence, laziness, contrariness, indulge in it. No one's punishing you. Listen carefully. We are never punished for our sins. We are punished by them. If I get drunk Friday night and I wake up Saturday morning with a headache, no God is punishing me. Getting the inevitable results. Overindulgence in alcohol. I'm not punished for my action, but by it. So if you're restless, if you're unhappy, if you're discontent, if your mind is squirrely, no blame. There's no magic bullet. You just allowed yourself to get indiscriminate in your revelry with the objects of the senses. Help us. Tune up the mind. Let go of all that crap. Revel in yourself. Next verse.
Satyabhi Sandha Narato Vimukto Mahatattvam Matmi Ya Mupai Iti Nityam Mithya Sandha Narastat tastu nashyat drishtam tadetat yada charo yaha. He who devotes himself to meditation on the reality and is free from nations attains to the eternal glory of the Atman. But he who dwells on the unreal is destroyed. That this is so is illustrated in the case of one who is not a thief and one who is a thief.
So if you live an honest life, you're not likely to get convicted of 34 counts of fraud, like what happened in New York today. And he, in his ignorance, it's the crooked judge, it's the crooked DA, it's all, they're out to get me. No awareness. If you're a thief, you'll probably pay the price. So also for the yogi. We practice intense renunciation. We practice this introversion of the mind. Not because we're going to get a gold star. Nobody's going to pat you on the head and say, oh, good yogi. We come to see that it's the most intelligent way to live. And this point is thundered in the Upanishads, in the Bhagavad Gita, the writings of Ramana Maharshi, Chinmayananda, Shankara. And if you pay attention to the mind, you'll see the veracity of it. All of this only inspires us to practice. Abhyasa vairagya. There it is. That's all of yoga. Practice and renunciation. All right, one more.
Yatista dhanusannidhi bandha hetu vihaya swayam yam mahastitya tya matrashtyavatishta sukhayathina nunishta brahmani swanubhutya harati paramivadhyakarya dukkha pratitam. The sadhaka should give up dwelling on the unreal, which causes bondage, and should always fix his thoughts on the Atman as this I myself am. For steadfastness in Brahman, gained through the realization of one's identity with it, gives rise to bliss and thoroughly removes the misery born of nations, which one experiences in the state of ignorance.
Yes. So, mind you, the goal is not to become a realized person. The goal is not to say, oh, I'm doing well, I must be very close to realization. Oh, I think I'm getting there, maybe I'm not. That's still ignorance. Don't try to be a spiritual person. Mind you, I'm not saying don't practice. What are we to practice? Remember that you are Brahman. I'm not a person. I'm not the body, not the mind, not the thoughts. I have no thoughts or feelings of my own. What am I? Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Chidananda Rupam, my nature is bliss consciousness. And see the body, mind, intellect like you do a shadow. Yeah, it's hanging around, but not consequential. Keep tuning your mind to the it's Atmanam. It's reveling in our own self nature. Now, mind you, it's not like, am I tuned up? Am I not tuned up? It's not like a light switch on and off. There's no end to how deeply the mind can revel in revel. If you keep doing this, the bliss just gets richer, richer, richer. Can't be abused. Won't rot your liver. Doesn't cost anything. We'll quit here tonight. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru